Good evening. I'm David McLaughlin, Provost of New York University, and as Provost, I'm very pleased to welcome you all to what most certainly will be an interesting and important event. One of my most rewarding activities as Provost is to attend just this kind of event, university-wide lectures that feature the work, the ideas, and the scholarship of some of the most distinguished members of NYU's faculty. This evening is particularly gratifying as tonight's event marks the inauguration of a new lecture series that will highlight the work of the university-wide institutes that my office supports and oversees. Lectures in this new series will be held twice a year, with each lecture hosted by one of these institutes. The 10 institutes nourish interdisciplinary collaboration and cross-school activities. They span a wide array of disciplines, each drawing together groups of scholars from across the university and beyond. They range from the Center for the Study of Gender and Sexuality to the Hemispheric Institute for Performance and Politics, from the Humanities Initiative at NYU to the Institute for African American Affairs, and they include the international houses such as Africa House and China House. The oldest, the New York Institute for the Humanities, was founded over 30 years ago. The newest, the Institute for Public Knowledge, was established just 2 years ago. The Remarque Institute was founded in 1995 under the direction of tonight's speaker, Professor Tony Judt. It was named after Eric Maria Remarque, the author of All Quiet on the Western Front, and whose widow, Paulette Goddard, made a generous bequest to New York University. The Remarque Institute aims to promote the study and discussion of Europe and its neighbors, and to encourage mutual understanding between Americans and Europeans. Among the most high-profile of Remarque's many activities has been its biannual Remarque Lectures. These lectures have gained a distinguished reputation for scholarship and productive thought, provocative thought. I'm very pleased that tonight's Remarque lecture is also the inaugural lecture for the Institute's lecture series. I will now turn the podium over to my close friend and colleague, Dick Foley, Professor of Philosophy and the university's Vice Chancellor for Strategic Planning. Dick.
Welcome, everyone. It's my great pleasure to introduce Tony Judt tonight. Tony is, by any measure, one of the great and most influential historians of our time. He's been at NYU for more than 2 decades now, 22 years to be exact. He's served many capacities here at NYU, chair of the history department, dean of humanities, university professor, as Dave said, also founder and director of the Remarque Institute. He came here to NYU from Oxford. Prior to that, he had been at UC Berkeley and King's College, Cambridge. He has, of course, been a prodigious publisher, 13 books, starting with early works on French socialism and intellectualism, to his magisterial but also hugely readable History of Europe since 1945, and his very most recent book, Reappraisals, Reflections on the Forgotten 20th Century. His list of awards and honors seems almost endless. American Academy of Arts and Science, British Academy, Royal Historical Society, Guggenheim Fellow. His book on post-war Europe has been translated into 19 different languages. It's won the Arthur Ross Prize, the Remarque Peace Prize, the Bruno Kreisky Prize, the European Book Prize, and he himself, for lifetime achievement, has won the Hannah Arendt Prize and the Orwell Prize. This is, of course, a spectacular resume, but even it does not capture the full impact and certainly not the texture of Tony's work, which I like to think is linked to one of the qualities about Tony that I admire most, his engagement with the world and the foundation of his work in things that he himself has done, seen, experienced. This engagement began early for Tony. His education was at the finest European institutions, Cambridge and École Normale Supérieure. But before entering Cambridge, he spent what we would now call a gap year in Israel, where there he farmed on a kibbutz and served as a driver during the Six-Day War in 1967. As a young man, he also traveled extensively and exhaustively in Europe, seeing firsthand how it hung together, or in some cases did not hang together. Even now, to this day, he can tell you, as one of his many side expertise, just how long it takes to get by train from, say, Bucharest to Hamburg, what time the trains leave, which track they leave from, where you will have to change. He can tell you these things because he's traveled these lines many, many times, and while traveling, thought how the history and relationship between any two given points in Europe has been shaped by their distance from one another, and how extensive the difficulties are in getting from one point to another. It is this link between ideas and actual lived experience that I think permeates his work and is central to its trajectory. Though sometimes, especially in the early work, it's been the absence of that link that's been the subject of his inquiries. For example, his early books on French intellectuals, which focused in part on the dangerous ease with which ideas, thoughts, theories can weigh sometimes too lightly on one's actions, one's engagement with the world. That gap never exists in Tony's works. And it is one of the primary reasons in my mind why Tony is not just one of the great historians of our time, but also one of the great public intellectuals of our time. It is with enormous pleasure that I introduce Tony Judt to speak on what is living and dead in social democracy. Tony Judt.
Can you hear me? Good, thanks. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope you don't mind if I begin by shooting the elephant in the house. If you'll forgive the first of a number of politically incorrect observations. As you can see, I'm lecturing to you from a wheelchair. The reason is that I was diagnosed a year ago with a progressive variant of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which you will know as Lou Gehrig's disease. This destroys progressively most of the muscles in the body, and in my case, as you can see, it's produced a situation where I'm paralyzed from the neck down, and also use this rather ridiculous-looking tube on my face to breathe, since those muscles don't work either. This has certain advantages from your point of view. I promise you I shall not distractingly walk around the stage. I shall not deploy redundant body language or excessive ersatz Italian hand gestures. What you get this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is the original talking head. Thanks. I should say just a couple more points. A number of people did ask me if I would lecture, instead of on the topic that I'm going to talk about, if I would lecture instead on the disease that I have, Lou Gehrig's disease, because this would be useful to raise public understanding, awareness, and so on. But I'm not a doctor, so what I would have given you would have been a sort of show and tell. It does seem to me that, so far as show is concerned, you can see perfectly well for yourselves what the disease looks like and what it does to people. As far as tell goes, all I can assure you is that this is, in every sense of the word, a non-communicable disease. So you will have to pass on the specialized medical lecture. If I were American, I might have responded more positively to those of my colleagues who said that it would be uplifting for you and for me, for you to see that a quadriplegic wearing facial Tupperware could give a public lecture. But I'm English, and we don't do uplifting. There is, however, one last point, a connection between my condition and my subject. And it's this, that if I lived in Sweden, I would get at least as good medical treatment, but I would save about $100,000 a year. That should give me some justification for slipping into my subject, which is what is living, what is dead in social democracy. If you look over the past few years, the public opinion polls and surveys in this country, you'll find that if people are asked, would you like your child to have better life chances at birth? Would you like your wife's survival in maternity to be more guaranteed? Would you like your children to be better educated? Would you like better guarantees of support if you lose your job? Would you like universal medical coverage at low cost? Would you like longer life expectancy? Would you like less crime and more public services? People in this country universally say yes. If they're then told that these things are available in Austria or Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, and that they come with somewhat higher taxes and an active role by the state in their provision, they say in those same surveys, no, we do not want socialism. No, we do not want the state interfering in our affairs. And above all, please, no, we don't wish to pay higher taxes. There is this curious cognitive dissonance between the ends that people are willing, in very large numbers, to approve and even seek, and the means that they are unwilling to consider. And I want to ask initially why that is. Obviously, this is an old question in the United States. Over 100 years ago, the German sociologist Werner Sombart asked, why is there no socialism in America? And there are many answers to this, some of which are deeply structural, some of which have to do with the sheer size of the country. It's very hard to institute organized collective activity and services in